Hello, and welcome to SoCal Solar Energy. We have found that most companies like yours have been considering solar for some time. You probably have talked to several solar companies and are now totally confused, or at least have more questions than answers. The problem usually comes from the solar companies themselves. They do not understand how the utility companies calculate your utility bills when they are explaining what size solar system is best for you. My objective here is to provide you with a basic understanding of your utility bill. Then explain our strategies in using solar power to maximize reduction of your utility bill. This will give you the tools to make an informed decision regarding future energy solutions. This is a typical Southern California Edison bill. You probably don't look at the details, you just pay what is owed. Understanding the basics of how the fees are calculated will help in your decision in determining if a solar system is right for you. Again, all you need is a basic understanding of these details. It'll be helpful if you have a copy of your summer bill and a winter bill. If you do not have one, an example can be downloaded off our web pages. We will be examining the different items on the bill that you will be charged. Rate schedule, option B, delivery, generation, facility-related demand, energy summer, customer charge, summertime-related on, summertime-related mid, and state sales tax. The solar system will relate to each of these charges differently. Every company is placed in a rate structure determined by your utility company. GS1 applies to small business. GS2 applies to small and to medium-sized businesses. G3 is for medium businesses, and TOU8 is for large businesses. The majority of these businesses fall into these rate structures, however there are others. Each of these rate structures have two options, option A and option B. You do not have a choice which rate structure business you are in, but you do have a choice of which option is best for you. Southern California Edison will bill you differently depending on which rate structure and option that you are in. Delivery versus generation charges. The bills are broken down into general headings of delivery and generation charges. The generation charges are the cost of generating the power. This could be natural gas, coal, nuclear, solar, or wind. It would include the cost of fuel, power plants, and personnel. The delivery charges result from getting the power generated by the plants to your facility. This would include such things as power lines and switching stations. Delivery and generation charges are not used directly in the calculations of your utility bill. There are only two basic types of measurements your utility company uses in calculating your utility bill. These measurements reflect your actual energy consumption. They are listed as kilowatt hours, or kWh, that's your energy, and demand charges, which are listed as kilowatts, or kW. What is the energy, or kilowatt hour, part of your bill? Energy is watts times the length of time that it is turned on. For example, if you have a single 100-watt light bulb that is turned on for 10 hours, that equals 1,000 watt-hours or 1 kilowatt hour. Another example would be if you had 10 100-watt light bulbs that are turned on for 1 hour and then turned off. The energy consumed would be the same, 1,000 watt-hours or 1 kilowatt hour. This is the basic measurement that your utility company keeps track of over the month. How does the utility company record energy consumption? Energy consumption varies over time. Lights go on and off. Air conditioning, on and off. The consumption is logged sequentially every 15-minute time period for the entire month. The first logging is the first 15-minute energy consumption for the first 15 minutes of the first day of the month. The second 15-minute total is then recorded, and so on and so forth. There are about 2,900 15-minute energy totals for the month. Your entire bill is based on these 15-minute energy totals. There are different rates associated with these totals depending on several factors. What is the cost for each 15-minute energy total? The cost is the product of the 15-minute total times the rate. The rate changes from hour to hour. Next, we will analyze the rates. What are the rates based on? Time of year is either summer or winter. Summer rates are higher than winter rates. For time of day, there is an on-peak, a mid-peak, and an off-peak. On-peak is in the afternoon and is the most expensive. Rates are based on day of the week, which would be weekdays, weekends, or holidays. Weekdays are the most expensive and more expensive than weekends and holidays. Finally, the rates are different for each rate structure, as we talked about earlier, GS1, GS2, GS3, etc. The rates not only vary depending on these factors, but they also range from 6 cents a kilowatt hour up to 32 cents a kilowatt hour. Here are Southern California Edison's rate periods. The on-peak, which is the most expensive, is from noon to 6 p.m. weekdays except holidays. This on-peak rate applies only during the summer months. Mid-peak goes from 6 a.m. to noon and 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. weekdays for the summer and 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. during the winter. Off-peak is 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. weekdays, all day on the weekends and holidays. The off-peak time period is the least expensive rate, but it should be noted that these times are the same for each of the rate structures, GS1, GS2, GS3, etc. The summer rates apply for the months from June through September. The on-peak rate could be 33 cents a kilowatt hour. This is from noon to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, except holidays. Mid-peak could be around 13 cents a kilowatt hour, which is from 6 a.m. to noon and 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. on weekdays, except holidays. Off-peak is about 6 cents a kilowatt hour, as is any other time of the day. As you can see, the rates vary dramatically. It should be noted that these rates vary depending on the rate schedule, GS1, GS2, etc., and which option is used. Winter rates apply for the months from October through May. There are only two time periods for winter, mid and off. Mid-peak runs from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. weekdays except holidays. A typical rate would be about 8.5 cents per kilowatt hour. Off-peak is any other time, and a typical rate would be around 6.5 cents a kilowatt hour. Rates vary dramatically depending on the time of year, time of day, rate schedule, and rate option. These rates play a various role in a key part in determining which is the best solar system for you. Time period totals. The 15-minute totals are summed for each time period. For example, each of the 15-minute totals that fall in the time periods from noon to 6 p.m., summer weekdays except holidays, are summed. This sum is then multiplied by the summer on-peak rate. The result is the summer on-peak billing. We have been discussing energy charges. Now let's discuss demand charges. Demand charges are the kW, or kilowatts, part of your bill. The kilowatt rate is based on the highest 15-minute energy consumption for the specified time period. For example, the utility company looks at all of the 15-minute energy totals for the summer on peak. The billing is based on the highest of these 15-minute totals. There are approximately 500 15-minute totals in the on-peak period for each month. The kilowatt is the highest value. This is the same procedure for each time period, both summer and winter. It should be noted that a solar system by itself will have no effect on the kilowatt value. There are three different demand charges. Facility-related demand is the highest 15-minute energy consumption for any time of the totals, for any day of the month. This includes all 15-minute consumption for on-peak, mid-peak, and off-peak time periods. The on-peak and mid-peak time periods are done separately. The highest 15-minute energy total these time periods. The billing charges for each time period is the product of the demand times the demand charge. Option A versus Option B. There are different time period rates for each option. Option A has higher energy rates and lower demand rates. Option B has lower energy rates and higher demand rates. You need to be on an option that keeps your bills the lowest. Option B is probably best if you do not have a solar system, and Option A if you do have a solar system. This is definitely a factor in determining what the solar system payback will be for you. Which option would be best with a solar system and which option would be best without solar? Usually, if you do not have solar and your facility is an office building, Option B would be right for you. For industrial facilities, Option A would be best because they have high demands. They usually have machines going on and off, resulting in demand fluctuations. With solar, Option A would probably be the best fit. There will be no energy charges and no summer demand charges. Southern California Edison, or most of the other utility companies, will provide interval data for last year's consumption. Interval data is last year's 15-minute totals for the entire year. This data will enable us to analyze which option is best for you. What is net metering and how does it work with solar? Understanding net metering is actually quite simple. Net metering will be a contract between you and the utility company that pertains to the buying and selling of energy. The utility company has agreed to buy from you any excess energy you do not need at the same rate that they sell to you. The solar system will be producing more energy during on-peak time than what you need to operate. The excess energy will be sold back to the utility company at the same on-peak rate that they sell to you. Your utility company gives you a full retail credit for the energy you feed back to them. So how does this work? Well, let's look at the time period that you produce more energy than what you consume. You will be selling the excess energy back to the utility company in the form of a credit. For example, you need 200 kilowatt hours for the on-peak time period of the month. Your solar system produces 280 kilowatt hours of energy for this time period. The utility company records the 80 kilowatt hours in your favor, crediting you. This is essentially turning your meter backwards. Now let's consider a time period when your solar system does not create as much energy as you consume. For example, you need 290 kilowatt hours for the off-peak period of the month. Your solar system only produces 220 kilowatt hours of the month. Now you need to pay for the 70 kilowatt hours that you came up short with for the month. This debit will be applied against your on-peak credit. This is turning your meter forward. Remember, this only applies to energy charges. Net metering does not apply to demand charges. Now we're going to talk about calculating your net energy costs. One thing we're going to talk about is how sometimes your meter turns forwards and sometimes it turns backwards. We're also going to discuss the net energy that is summed for each time period of the month. So let's calculate these net energy costs. Each time period is a kilowatt hours times the rate for that time period. Because you have a solar system and because of net metering, some are negative and some are positive. The month's total energy billing is a sum of all the time period billings. Although the utility bills have other charges, such as demand and service charges, solar only applies to the energy portion. This is net metering. Compare the solar system energy savings with what the plant consumes in kilowatt hours cost with net metering. If the solar system is sized properly, the solar system needs to produce about 80% of the kilowatt hours that the facility needs for the month. The exact proportion can be determined by careful examination of the plant's last year's interval data and the hourly expected solar production. The different time period rates makes this possible. The next slides will make this apparent. Let's take a look at the on-peak period for your August summer billing with solar. The plant consumes 3,801 kilowatt hours of energy. The solar system produced 5,233 kilowatt hours of energy, which is 1,423 more kilowatt hours than what was consumed. For this example, the rate for the summer on-peak energy is 35 cents a kilowatt hour. The plant will now be credited $498 for the month of August. This is when the sun is up and working hard. Look at the billing for the mid-peak period for the month of August with solar. The plant consumed 5,645 kilowatt hours and the solar system produced 5,001 kilowatt hours, which is 644 less kilowatt hours than what was consumed. The rate for the summer mid-peak energy is 15 cents a kilowatt hour. The plant will now be debited $97 for the month of August. Look at the billing for the off-peak period for the month of August with solar. The plant consumed 13,864 kilowatt hours, and the solar system produced 9,001 kilowatt hours, which is 4,863 less kilowatt hours than what was consumed. The rate for the summer off-peak energy is 6 cents a kilowatt hour. The plant will now be debited $401 for the month of August. Now let's look at the total August billing. The on-peak was a credit, while the mid-peak and off-peak charges were a debit. The net was zero. Also note that solar needed to produce only 78% kilowatt hours of the consumption to zero the bill. Now this is only an example of how net metering works. Normally the month's energy charge is never zero. Some months are credits and some months are debits. The goal is to have the yearly energy zero. An understanding of what the inflation rate of energy is an important part of any feasible study. Energy inflation rates are different from demand inflation rates. They are not related. The energy inflation rate over the last 20 years has been 3%. Over the last 6 years, it has been 0%. And last year, it had deflated 3%. Recent history indicated that energy rates will either stay constant or will go down. This makes it a little difficult for solar to pencil. Demand is not the same story. It has been inflating at a rate of 3.5% over the last 20 years, 26% over the last 6 years, and 28% last year. All of the energy increases for the last 6 years have been due to demand. Solar will not address these costs. Now let's talk about why you need an energy solution with SoCal Solar Energy. For one, energy costs will become less important over time, while demand costs will become more important over time. Solar by itself only reduces energy costs. It does not help reduce the demand costs. But SoCal Solar Energy Incorporated provides energy solutions that reduces both the demand costs as well as the energy costs. SoCal Solar Energy, Energy Solutions. We provide you with a fantastic solar system that is perfect for your business. We also provide lighting retrofits to keep those lights on during business hours, but keeping those energy costs down. Also, motion sensors, which will allow lights to turn on when somebody comes into a room and turn off when somebody leaves the room. And finally, our demand controller, which will keep those demand costs down. I want to thank you for taking time today to be part of this presentation with SoCal Solar Energy Incorporated.